losing weight without tracking your food is a recipe for failure. Now, don't get me wrong. What I am not saying is that losing weight without tracking food is not possible because it is absolutely possible to lose weight without tracking your food. People do it all the time. So like I get that the allure to losing weight without tracking food is obviously very high. I'm somebody myself who hates tracking food. I love eating more like intuitively and kind of being free and not having to be chained to a phone or journal or whatever at all times. But what I want to share today is that the number one reason that I see with personal clients and with trainers that I coach with their clients, the reason why people are having a hard time with weight loss maintenance, that means keeping the weight off after you've lost it, is because of this kind of refusal to track food. So, and when I'm talking about tracking food, obviously there's a bunch of different ways to do it, whether, we're looking at something like Lose It or MyFitnessPal or Weight Watchers or something like that. Like, am I advocating WW? No, no. But I 100% get the allure to not tracking. I am a huge fan of not having to be chained to devices and tracking every single morsel of food that goes into your mouth. And especially if you have been someone who has like dieted for long periods of time, when things were a little bit easier in your 20s and 30s, like it's a little bit hard to like suddenly pick up the habit of tracking your food well into your 40s. So like I get it, because there is, when clients come to me or when I am training other trainers, like I hear all of the angles about it. And like I say, I'm here to say that they're all valid. It being too time consuming, it's just tedious to track every single thing that goes into your mouth. Some people feel overwhelmed. The process of having to track food, in addition to the 100,000 other things that you have going on in your life, can feel like a lot. And what I find sometimes with my own personal clients, or like I said, like with other trainers, is that there is this tendency for the client to feel ashamed of their food. So when it comes to like tracking, let's say for the sake of having a trainer or accountability partner or something like that, or maybe you're in using the more like social aspects of some of the tracking apps, it can be like maybe shameful or embarrassing to put in what you're eating because you're comparing it to what somebody else is eating. Or if you have a trainer looking at it, I have a lot of clients that are like scared to punch in what they ate because they don't want me to see it. So like I see too that there can also be some of that. There's a little bit of that like shame and embarrassment to admit it to your whoever is holding you accountable, but sometimes even to yourself. A lot of times it's like, if I don't track it, it's not there. Like if I don't physically write it down, take a picture of it, punch it into an app, then I can move on with my day as if it didn't really happen. Like I don't actually have to face up to the reality of whatever I did just put in my mouth. For some people, it can feel really restrictive because of the fact that it can take away the pleasure of eating. So I did a series before on intuitive eating, and this kind of, it touches on a little bit of this as well, that when you are in those phases of watching every morsel of food that goes into your mouth, restriction on what you're eating, whatever, counting calories, counting points, counting macros, whatever the things are, like one aspect of counting those things, especially for the sake of fat loss, means that you are technically like you're watching them to make sure that you're not eating too much, which means it's more restrictive because you're counting those things to make sure that you're lessening them, to like almost like it feels like restriction, it feels like punishment to punch something in and be like, oh, that's too much, and then take it out or whatever. Or maybe you've already eaten it and you punch it in and there's too much of it there. So like I get that it can also feel very restrictive in that aspect, as far as there's just no joy in eating when you have to like decide what to eat based on these like elements about it: calories, protein, fiber, things like that. When you're eating it based on the chemistry of the food versus the taste of the food versus how it makes you feel, like just being able to relax into the moment and be like, like, wow, this food is delicious and I'm just enjoying it for the sake of it being delicious. So again, the intuitive eating series, I will link that that I did also did a lot, it goes a lot deeper. Some people may not have access to the technology or tools, or because I do have clients that still live in maybe like more rural areas, or because I do have a lot of older clients that are 50s, 60s, and maybe they're still anti-technology. Like it happens. So I have a lot of clients, even the ones that use my workout app, that like don't actually log into the app. They only log in maybe once a month into the workout vault where all the like PDFs of everything are, and they just print those off and use them there because they're not a fan of using technology. So for some people, like that's the reason why, is there's the technology issue. So like I said, like there's definitely tons of reasons. There could be, some people are just like, oh, I'm just not consistent enough to do that. Other people feel like, oh, I'm already consistent enough. Like I already eat super healthy. Like I know that I'm eating healthy, so therefore I don't need to track it. And like I said, there are people who just like, they're just busy. Like women are busy these days. So they just have so many things that they're just like, this is just yet another thing to add to my to-do list that I'm just not here for it. So like I wanted to throw all of those caveats out there to say that like I get it and I am here for it when you are in an intuitive eating phase. So again, go and look at that series because I talk all about how much I love intuitive eating, how the benefits of intuitive eating and all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I spent a little chunk of time with that caveat so that it's not like I'm just saying like, oh, go be super restrictive and count calories all the time. But now I am going to talk about counting calories. So the way that I explain it to a lot of my clients is when we're talking about this. So like if you watch the series on intuitive eating and you look at it from that perspective and you think about all of these benefits of eating intuitively and not having to be restrictive about what you eat and not counting every single morsel of food that comes into your mouth, I like to explain it to my clients who are like, yeah, I just want like that part. I just want to like eat what I want, but I still want to lose weight. I explain to them like it's like a GPS. Like when you are going somewhere, when you're traveling to somewhere for the first time, if you are anything like me, I am very much directionally challenged. So as much as I would like to be one of those people that are just like, I went there once and I just knew how to get there from then on, I'm not that person. I'm the person that like, if I'm not paying attention when somebody else is driving, like I can't get there again on my own. Like I'm like, what? How do we get here? I don't know what turns we made or whatever. Like I can go somewhere 100 times with my husband, and then one day he's like, yeah, meet me at XYZ place that I've been to 100 times, and I'll be like, how do I get there? And obviously, I cheat the system a little bit more now with having maps on my phone and things like that. Like, so since the advent of GPS systems, this has really worked out in my favor because of me being that person, me being the person that's like, if you give me 12 directions, if you're like, then make a left and make a right and then go east or go southwest, like I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. I don't know what any of that stuff means. Like, okay, go right and then hold on. Like I would just keep talking to you on the phone. Okay, I just turned right, now what? So when the GPS system came out, it allowed me to go to more places that I hadn't been before. And it allowed me to have those step-by-step instructions, because literally that's what the GPS is doing. Like I'm turning right and then it's like, okay, turn right. And then it's telling me the next step and it's telling me the next step and it's telling me the next step. And it's telling me to make a U-turn when I do that. That is the way that I look at logging food, is that, in the beginning, that's really what it is it's giving you that set of instructions for where you're going. So it's helping you to get to the place and to be able to look at like the line items of how you got there. But also, once you have driven there enough times, even if you're directionally challenged like me, at some point in time, you don't necessarily, especially if it's like somewhere local, somewhere that you're going all the time, you don't need to like GPS it anymore. You don't need to like punch it in your maps and ask your phone to tell you how to get there. I mean, maybe I'm not going to say that I don't do it sometimes, but the more times that you've gone to a place, the less that you need those instructions. And that's the way that I look at logging food, is that when you're looking at the person who is not logging their food at all, and like I will shout myself out here or throw myself under the bus, whichever one it is, and say that like I don't log my food as much as I make my clients log my food. The reason for that is because decades of not only logging my own food, but also monitoring other people's food. Like I can pretty much calculate calories, macros, all the things like in my head because of the fact that I've done it so many times. I've gone through cut phases, I've gone through bulk phases. I know the nutrients of most foods, at least generally. So I can get into the general vicinity of most locations when it comes to food calories, macros, and things like that. But I will say that if I am switching phases, so say that like if I'm in maintenance, I can pretty much do like very intuitively, I can maintain. If I am moving into a muscle building phase or a fat loss phase, I will still crack open my fitness pal and punch things in until I'm like in a groove with what I'm doing. And then I kind of am like setting it like a crock pot, like, okay, I'm pretty much going to eat these same foods all the time. If that changes, then I'll come back and I'll punch these in again. And usually that's when I kind of fall off of things, is if I'm eating the same things every day because I've already punched in those exact same calories and macros and stuff over and over again. So I know what they are. But if I add something new to the mix, I will go in and recalculate and see like, okay, how can I now fit this thing in so that I can continue on the path that I'm on? Another example of that would be that if I don't do that, if I add the new thing in and I don't go in and check first, if I start noticing, like, let's say I'm in a muscle building phase and the scale isn't going up anymore, then I will go back and I'll recheck and say, like, I thought I was in a surplus, maybe I'm not. What's going on that I'm not gaining anymore? Or if I'm trying to lose, same thing. Or with a client, if they're trying to lose, that's what I'm going to look at, is like, okay, let's punch these things in and make sure that you're in an actual deficit. So that is where that starts to come in handy, is that like if you already know what you're doing, and this is the reason why I will always tell clients who do have that perspective, who are like, I don't want to log my food forever, then I will say that, okay, we need to pay more attention when you are logging then, to in order to make that possible. The same way that if I am getting in a car and driving to somewhere, or even if I'm not driving, I am paying more close attention because I know that at some point I'm going to have to make this trip on my own, versus just sitting back and not really paying attention because of the fact that somebody else is driving. So that's something that diets tend to teach us. So like it tends to make us more directionally challenged because of the fact that we get into the passenger seat. The diet is like, eat this, this, and that. And if we're not actually like tracking those things and we're just following the diet, then we're kind of following it blindly and not really paying attention to the surroundings. What are the landmarks? What are the things other than these specific foods? Like if I get detoured or rerouted one day, do I know how to find my way back to XYZ thing again? So that's the way that I would like for you to look at it when we're talking about the tracking. Because what I find is that so many women come to me, or like I say, when I'm talking to frustrated trainers and they're like, I can't get, XYZ, this person XYZ results. All the main thing that I want to know is the numbers. Like, okay, well, let's crunch these numbers and see what's happening. If those numbers don't exist, it makes it so difficult to troubleshoot. So that's the other reason why I would say you want to make sure that you have that stuff there, because what I find is more often than not, especially as women, busy women that are doing the things and don't really have time to like punch stuff in. And like I say, sometimes we don't even want to admit to ourselves that we are eating certain things. Because of that, where our minds are going so much all the time, that, and science has proven that like our memory isn't as good as we think it is. Most people, most of us, when we remember something, we are fudging parts of it, not knowingly. It's just what our brain does. So I see this so much in fitness and in fat loss specifically, that when a woman is when I'm on a coaching call and she's recapping what happened and we don't have data, or like before we look at the data, like there's one version of the story. Like, I don't understand what's going on. I am not losing any weight. The scale isn't moving at all. I don't think I'm losing any fat, or I don't think I'm gaining any muscle. I'm eating protein all the time, or I'm in a deficit, or I finished my reset, or whatever the case may be. So when we get on the call, typically, and this is especially when there's like a prospective client, like when I'm talking to someone who wants to become a client, There's all of these things. There's this whole story that they have about this is what I've been doing up until now, and it's not working. When we start to break down what not working means, that is when we start to find little holes in the story. And like I said, it's not like it's on purpose. This person does not get on the phone to lie to me. It's just that we tend to look back at things a little more fuzzy. We look back at things a bit more fuzzy than they actually were. So a person may say, I'm not losing any weight. And then I'll say, okay, well, let's take a look at your weigh-ins. And they'll say, well, I haven't weighed in a couple months just because like the scale was driving me crazy. Okay, so we don't know because there hasn't been any weigh-ins, which is fine. I'm not a huge fan of the scale. And they'll say, I don't think I've gained any muscle or lost any fat. Okay, have you been getting scans? Have you been getting body composition scans for us to compare what the muscle amount that you had was then versus the muscle amount you have now, what your body fat percentage was versus what it is now? Oh, no, I can't afford to get scans. Okay, so we don't have scans, we don't have body weight. Okay, so what about food? Have you finished doing a metabolism reset? Yep, I did a metabolism reset for about 9 months. Okay, wow, 9 months, that's amazing. Like, what were your calories at during that time? How long did it take you to get to the calorie level? Blah, 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 blah. So we talk about all those things, and the person will say one version of the things, and then I will say, like, okay, well, let's open up your my fitness pal so I can see what we're looking at. Well, I stopped logging my food. I wasn't really logging my food because, like, I know that I was eating more than enough. I know that I was eating more than enough calories. I mean, I was so full all the time, and like I was eating protein at every meal. I think you can see where this is going. So, like, that is the way that things tend to go when I'm talking to super busy, like, women that have so much going on in their lives, is that because there's so many other things that they're creating structure for in their lives, that this area of where they're trying to actually accomplish a goal, they're a lot looser than they realize. And that's because um they don't want to have to add structure to one more thing. They don't want to have to restrict one more thing. They don't want to have to, like, have the data and watch all the things, but it creates a problem when we are trying to troubleshoot. So, like I say, those are the things that I start to see get in the way. And that's why I say that losing weight without tracking your food, without logging a morsel of food that comes into your mouth, is absolutely possible. There's so many variations over there. That's why the diet industry is so vast, because as long as we can keep coming up with new and innovative ways to either, increase your calorie burn or decrease your calorie intake, we're going to create, a variation of what the person is seeking, which is weight loss. So if we can get you to burn a little bit more calories, get you to eat a little bit less food, regardless of how we slice that up, you're going to get that end result. But when you don't have the data for how that all came together, and then you discontinue that particular thing, or like maybe you're doing something that your body adapts to, like as far as workouts, when you take on a different eating style, or you travel, or like you were only eating a certain restrictive way until you lost the weight, then you go back to that way of eating, you move to a different country and you don't have access to the same foods. There's so many reasons why those patterns can get disrupted. And if you don't know what they were, if you don't have any record of them when you go to recreate that scenario, then it ends up being very hard. You either hit a plateau, or you don't see any results at all, or you like see results and then they go away. So like those are the things that, like I say, then when you do reach out for help, because you're like, okay, maybe like the last time I hired somebody, this thing happened, or the last time I went on a diet, it happened. And then you start creating stories around that specific thing, and your vision of it gets fuzzy. You don't have any track record of what you ate, how long you ate it for, what the breakdown of those foods were, and how your body reacted to them. And when you don't have those things, it makes troubleshooting pretty much non-existent. There is no way to troubleshoot it. So, like I said, as much as I do understand the allure of losing it, without that, because of the fact that whenever you don't have that, whenever something is random, it's not duplicatable. I don't know if that's a word, but I do know I say it a lot. So I'm going to stick with it. Random is not duplicatable. Random workouts, random eating without logging your food, working out without logging what you did. All of those things lead to random results that you cannot recreate if you actually like them, or that you cannot improve upon if you don't like them. So whether you are someone that is going to be like in the market for hiring a coach for help at some point, or you want to really like pin down your own things and like really like get to it and like hold your feet to the fire to get the results that you want, I encourage you to log back into your MyFitnessPal or Lose It or whatever the app is, and start looking at the food again. Now, the caveat to what I was saying earlier about Weight Watchers and WW is that the reason why it is so successful is because of that, because it gets the people looking at their food. But typically, it's only if it's the lifetime person. And like I said, even then, that is probably the lowest level variation of tracking your food, because you're not looking at the actual components of the food when you're looking at points. Points don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, because of the fact that like that's still a lot harder to tweak than knowing the specifics of the food. So like what I would encourage, if you're somebody who feels like you like have a lot of success with Weight Watchers, I would still encourage you to know what the caloric breakdown and the macronutrient breakdown of those food items are. Does that mean that you're now doing double the work? Probably, which should probably tell you a little bit about whether or not it should be done. So that's something that I would do, because one of the things that I have found, like I said too, is a lot of times when someone does come to me and they're like, oh, I've had so much success on Weight Watchers before, it's the only thing that works for me, period. And we start talking about, okay, well, about how many calories was that? Because like I still need to equate it to what I use, which is calories. And when we finally like sit down and do the math, because that's what you have to do in order to troubleshoot, because again, like points don't actually equate to anything, then we're able to see like, okay, it's because you were drastically under eating and you underate for a very long period of time. And that is something that can be very cleverly hidden within the point system, the same way that it can be within any other system. Like I said, whether it's, low carb, low fat, keto, whatever the case may be, intermittent fasting, all of those things, because all of those are really just variations to get you to lower your calories. But the thing is that you never really know by how much. Sometimes it's a drastic lowering, sometimes it's not, because if the diet is having you to remove something that you didn't really eat that much of anyways, it may only be a small deficit, and that may not be such a bad thing. But if it's having you remove something that you were eating a ton of, then it could be creating a massive deficit, and you don't know until you hit the plateau that basically you were just under eating for a long period of time until your body rejected it. And now you may need a metabolism reset. And in order to start going down that path, it is good for you to understand where you're eating at now so that you can slowly increase those calories. And obviously, I have other videos about the metabolism reset process and what that means. So that is what I would encourage you guys to do, just for the sake of having that awareness, being able to properly set goals, being able to properly identify triggers, patterns, things that are happening from your food. Like maybe if your body is reacting a certain way, having a log of that actually does help you, in addition to being able to have a way to be accountable, because not logging your food is a lack of accountability. It helps you to be able to avoid or break through plateaus, because you actually know what you are doing in order to like move it up or down if it's something that your body does adapt to over time. And then also, like I said, because you have those numbers, you could make those adjustments if something has happened. So if you're somebody who do feel, that you are struggling to be consistent with it, I would at least do it for periods of time. And like I said, during those periods, be very, very intentional about paying attention to what you're logging versus just punching it in and being like the numbers worked or they didn't. Like take the time during those periods, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, whatever, like however long you can stand it, and really like be present with those numbers and what they equate to. Like, what does eating X amount of calories look like? What does eating X amount of protein look like? What does eating X amount of fiber look like? Like, what does it look like to maintain my food? Like, what are different varieties? What is something that when I throw it in the mix, it throws everything else off? All of those things. So, those are just some of the things that I would suggest. If you have not done our 7-day protein challenge, I think that that is also a great place to start because I give a lot of tips in there for kind of for logging food in general. But there's so much information in there, especially for it being free. I would highly recommend signing up for that, going through the challenge, and using some of those tips to incorporate in your journey as you start trying to develop that consistency of logging your food while you need it, but also the intentionality of paying attention to what you're eating so that if your ultimate plan is to be intuitive, you can be able to step away and at least maintain your weight loss more intuitively than someone who didn't log or didn't pay attention or just blindly follow a diet plan. So, hopefully, that gave you guys some food for thought today. Just a little something that I had been thinking about. It came up with quite a few clients a couple weeks ago, and this is a question that I actually ended up answering inside of my workout ball community, and I thought that it was something that you guys could benefit from as well. So if you enjoyed this, make sure that you give me a thumbs up or just leave me a comment below about if you want some more tips on how to track your food, or let me know how you feel about tracking. Maybe you're like, I listened to all this, Kiki, and I'm still not a fan, still not going to do it. That's fine too. We're all adults here, and you can totally make the choice and say, like, I figured out a way that works for me without logging. But that is just what I've seen across the board for over a couple of decades of helping people to lose fat and keep it off. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the next one.